In an unprecedented move that sent shockwaves across the globe, the United States Department of Justice has placed a $50 million bounty on the head of a sitting world leader, Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. This isn't a symbolic gesture. This is a formal indictment, accusing Maduro and his inner circle of leading a vast criminal enterprise. The charges are staggering: narco-terrorism, conspiracy to import hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States, and rampant corruption that has plundered a nation's wealth. The U.S. Attorney General laid it out in stark terms, painting a picture of a state hijacked by a criminal syndicate, using its sovereign power to facilitate the flow of deadly narcotics across the globe. But this announcement was just the opening salvo. To understand the gravity of this moment, you have to look beyond the courtroom and towards the turquoise waters of the Caribbean. Because this isn't just politics, this is war. A new kind of war, fought not with invading armies, but with legal indictments, crippling sanctions, and the looming threat of force. In the days that followed the indictment, the U.S. Southern Command initiated one of the largest military operations in the region in decades. An armada of Navy destroyers, Coast Guard cutters, and advanced surveillance aircraft surged into the Caribbean. The official mission: enhanced counter-narcotics operations. But the unspoken message was clear: a powerful projection of American military might aim directly at Caracas. The scale of this deployment hasn't been seen since the lead-up to the 1989 invasion of Panama to oust another strongman accused of drug trafficking, Manuel Noriega. And then came the designation that changed everything. For the first time in history, the United States has effectively classified a sitting president as a terrorist. This label is a geopolitical nuclear option. It moves beyond sanctions against a government and targets the man himself, placing him in the same category as infamous drug kingpins and extremist leaders. It unlocks a new arsenal of financial weapons, allowing the U.S. to hunt his assets, disrupt his networks, and isolate him from the international financial system in a way that was previously impossible. This decision has drawn a sharp line in the sand, forcing nations to choose a side. On one side, a coalition of over 50 countries that recognize opposition leader Juan Guaido as the legitimate president. On the other, Maduro's powerful allies, Russia, China, and Cuba, who decry the move as modern-day imperialism and a prelude to an illegal intervention. The stakes could not be higher. We are witnessing a direct confrontation between global superpowers playing out in a nation on the brink of collapse. How did a nation with the world's largest oil reserves fall into the hands of what the U.S. now calls a narco-terrorist regime? What does this unprecedented pressure campaign mean for the 30 million Venezuelans caught in the middle? And as warships patrol the coast and a $50 million price hangs over a president's head, the world holds its breath and asks one terrifying question: could this be the spark that ignites a full-blown war in America's backyard? The decision by the United States to classify key elements of the Venezuelan state not merely as a corrupt regime, but as a foreign terrorist organization, represents a seismic shift in international relations. This unprecedented classification changes everything. It's a move that catapults the confrontation from the realm of diplomacy and sanctions into a new, far more dangerous arena. By designating Maduro and his inner circle in this manner, Washington has unlocked a powerful and controversial legal arsenal, fundamentally altering the rules of engagement. This isn't just about political pressure anymore. It's about recasting a head of state as an enemy combatant, akin to the leaders of non-state terror groups. The implications are profound, not just for Venezuela, but for the very concept of state sovereignty. The legal architecture for this move is built upon post-9/11 legislation, designed to dismantle terrorist networks. Now, for the first time, this framework is being fully weaponized against a sitting government and its leader, creating a precedent that has international observers holding their breath. The question is no longer if the U.S. will act, but how and with what consequences. With this designation, a full-spectrum campaign of financial warfare, the potential for direct military action, and far harsher legal penalties are all now firmly on the table. The immediate effect is a financial strangulation of unprecedented scale. Under the FTO designation, any entity, foreign or domestic, that provides material support to Maduro's government can face severe U.S. sanctions and criminal prosecution. This goes far beyond targeting government officials. It means companies selling food, medicine, or technology to Venezuela could find their assets frozen and their executives facing arrest. It aims to create a total economic quarantine, cutting off the regime from the global financial system and making it radioactive to international partners. The goal is to suffocate the government's ability to function, to pay its military, and to conduct international trade, thereby creating unbearable internal pressure. It's a high-stakes gamble, one that risks deepening the country's already catastrophic humanitarian crisis in the hope of forcing a political collapse. The United States can now legally justify using a suite of powerful tools once reserved exclusively for combating transnational terror groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS against a sovereign head of state. This is the heart of the matter. The legal and operational playbook that guided the hunt for Osama bin Laden can now be adapted for the Western Hemisphere. This includes the authority for asset forfeiture on a global scale, the ability to deny visas and entry to anyone associated with the regime, and most critically, it erodes the traditional immunities afforded to state officials. The indictment effectively strips Maduro of his legitimacy as a president in the eyes of the U.S. legal system, reframing him as the leader of a criminal enterprise. This legal maneuver provides the scaffolding for potential future actions that would have previously been considered acts of war. It's a crossing of the Rubicon, blurring the lines between law enforcement and military intervention, and setting a precedent that could reshape how nations confront hostile regimes in the 21st century. In concert with this legal declaration, the largest show of U.S. military force in the region in over 3 decades is now underway. Under the guise of an enhanced counter-narcotics operation, the Pentagon has surged naval and air assets into the Caribbean. Warships, surveillance aircraft, and special operations forces are converging on Venezuela's periphery. This deployment, involving assets from U.S. Southern Command, is a clear and unambiguous message. It serves a dual purpose: to interdict the illicit flows of drugs and money that allegedly fuel the regime, and to position military hardware in striking distance, increasing the credibility of a military threat. The sheer scale of the operation is designed to intimidate, to signal to Maduro and his military backers that the United States has the capability and the will to enforce its new designation. It's a classic example of coercive diplomacy, where the velvet glove of law is backed by the iron fist of overwhelming military power. A sophisticated net of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance now envelops Venezuela. High-altitude surveillance drones, like the Global Hawk, provide persistent eyes in the sky. Naval patrols from the U.S. and allied nations monitor maritime traffic, while advanced RC-135 rivet joint aircraft hoover up electronic signals and communications from deep within the country. This constant monitoring allows U.S. intelligence to build a detailed picture of the regime's activities, track the movements of key officials, and identify vulnerabilities within the Venezuelan military and security services. The intelligence gathered is not just for observation, it's actionable. It can be used to enforce sanctions, to support potential covert operations, or to prepare for a kinetic military strike should the order ever be given. An invisible electronic siege is tightening around the country day by day. This is far more than a simple law enforcement action. It's a defining geopolitical turning point with global ramifications. The move forces nations to choose a side. Venezuela's allies, primarily Russia, China, and Cuba, have condemned the action as a violation of international law and a prelude to a US-led regime change operation. For them, this is a direct challenge to their interests in the region and a test of their commitment to a multipolar world order. Meanwhile, US allies in Latin America, particularly Colombia and Brazil, are cautiously supportive, but also deeply wary of the instability that a state collapse or military intervention could unleash on their borders. The entire hemisphere is now on edge, caught in a high-stakes standoff between a superpower determined to impose its will and a defiant state backed by rival global powers. The aftershocks of this decision will be felt for years to come, reshaping alliances and setting the stage for the next chapter in this complex and volatile crisis. The stage is set for a confrontation of monumental proportions. The United States' decision to place a multi-million-dollar bounty on Nicolas Maduro, branding him a narco-terrorist, is more than just a policy decision. It's a line drawn in the sand. This unprecedented move has sent shockwaves across the Western Hemisphere, forcing nations to choose sides in a rapidly escalating crisis. From Washington's perspective, this is a long-overdue measure of accountability. For years, officials have pointed to evidence of the Maduro regime's deep-seated corruption and its alleged partnership with drug cartels and FARC dissidents. They argue that Venezuela has transformed into a narco-state, a hub of illicit activity that directly threatens U.S. national security and fuels instability throughout the region. Proponents of the bounty see it as a surgical tool, designed to fracture Maduro's inner circle and empower democratic forces, ultimately offering a path out of the country's devastating humanitarian crisis. However, to critics and to the government in Caracas, this is a thinly veiled pretext for regime change, echoing a dark history of U.S. intervention in Latin America. They see the narco-terrorism charge not as a legal indictment, but as a political weapon designed to delegitimize a sovereign government. Allies of Maduro, including Russia and China, have condemned the move as a flagrant violation of international law, a dangerous act of modern imperialism that sets a perilous precedent. For millions, this isn't about justice, it's about a superpower imposing its will. What happens next may change hemispheric politics forever. The path forward is shrouded in uncertainty, with several potential outcomes. Will the immense pressure lead to a fracture within the Venezuelan government and a peaceful transition of power? Or will it force Maduro to double down, further entrenching his position and seeking stronger alliances with American adversaries, risking a proxy conflict on America's doorstep? The possibility of a miscalculation leading to direct military confrontation, however remote, looms over the entire situation. The ultimate question remains, but it is far more complex than a simple binary. Is this a necessary, albeit aggressive, tool for security and liberation? Or is it a reckless gamble, a dangerous escalation that risks plunging an entire region into chaos? The answer is far from clear. What do you think? Share your detailed perspective in the comments below, and subscribe for more in-depth geopolitical analysis that goes beyond the headlines.